Hello. We are now in week number 3 of my Postdoc Chronicles, and basically an update for the third week. Mainly, my phenomenology supervisor Jong asked me to study QED, quantum electrodynamics, before I could begin using the programs I have installed in my MacBook. He wants a really, I can he said running codes are easy, anyone can do that, but understanding the physics behind it is really very important. And seeing that I have a special case where I did not come from a particle physics background, so he had to check if I can do those calculations. So the thing is, I had to do from starting from the Feynman diagram, drawing the Feynman diagrams of specific processes, and then writing down the corresponding equations to those Feynman diagrams, and then from there, being able to derive the scattering cross section. So it involves a lot of algebra, mainly practice with the trace identities and so on. So basically, I did the scattering cross sections for example, electron muon scattering. And QED, it's really the one that made it a bit harder, is that you are now considering spins. So you are like averaging over the different spins of your systems, and then so with that, it makes the calculation a little bit longer. But there are like techniques that could make it shorter. In fact, if you've like tried it once, and then if you've seen the trace identities, some of the calculations, it becomes a, what do you call this, a routine, right? So after doing the electron muon scattering, I did Compton scattering, and then pair annihilation. And basically, these some of these processes are related by the so-called symmetry crossing. But I really wanted, even though I can do symmetry crossing, I really wanted to do calculate from the start, and then practice myself with traces. And then afterwards, after doing that, so the textbook that I followed is Hausen and Martin, right? So after doing that, what Jong asked me to do is, if you look at the Peskin and Schroeder's book in quantum field theory, after chapter 7, there's a thing there called final project, which involves radiation of gluon jets. Okay, so just to test if I understand my skill set in, or just to test my skill set in QED, he asked me to do that final project. So I'm currently doing that before we proceed to QCD. And basically, that project is very much related to QCD, because it involves, so instead of solving the electron muon scattering, so at the other end of the Feynman diagram, instead of having muons there, instead of having hadrons in general, any other particle, you change it with quarks, right? And so that final project, what it does is, you consider, if just you consider the do the quarks, and then do a loop vertex correction with a gluon. So in like chapter 6, what Peskin and Schroeder did is, they were able to do the loop correction for vertex with a photon, right? With a photon connecting the outer vertex of the like for mu1, for example. So I'm doing that right now, and basically the point is, it's very similar to that loop correction. It you just have to like do some substitutions. For example, the charge of the quark is different, and so on. And so basically, if you do the techniques of QED, you will get a sort of a wrong correction, but under a certain substitution, so which involves the coupling, the alpha, you get the predictions of the QCD. But yeah, so before we move on to QCD, I need to be able to do that, and hopefully we can do QCD next week. So what Jong is really trying to do is giving me a very quick crash course in quantum field theory, so that we can start doing codings in the computer. Because what we're doing is, we're solving like this. For example, the gluon jet, that's like electron, and then you have a photon, and then you have a quarks. But sometimes that could it could lead to so-called hadronization, because an accelerating quark could, produce a gluon, and then it will produce another quark, and then, instead of your usual two jets, you will have like three jets, and so on. And in fact, in that's how John Ellis was able to show, phenomenologically, that's how he was able to determine the existence of a gluon, because typically when you do that, E plus E minus collision, and then you're producing quarks. Typically you have two jets, but then he theorized that if a gluon exists, then we obtain something that is called a three jets. And in fact, if you do higher energies, you get what is known as the Parton shower, which leads to hadronization. Okay, and of course, in order to be able to do that, you can't do that by hand anymore. Parton showers, there will be like a lot of gluons going out and then forming these quarks, and so on. So we need to do computer programs. So basically, what I've been doing in the physics part. And in my daily life here, let's see, what can I tell you? I've run out of, like, typically when I eat dinner, I brought like the canned corned beefs, called what do you call this? The expensive ones. Um, that I think the Jollibee uses in their corned beef. I've been cooking that, like, typically every night for my dinner. I've run out of it. So what I do typically is I go out and then buy my dinner. Okay, and I noticed that there's a convenience store there. So sometimes I buy like fish and so on, and it's near this what do you call this, traffic light. And during the early days when I was here, I asked the guards, like, is there any convenience store nearby? The curious thing is that the instruction, they said, there's a convenience store just right, like beyond the robot. And I was like, I don't know what a robot is. Maybe it's like a name of a street or the name of the store, and so on. And then the pack actually told me that in South Africa they call traffic lights robots. Okay, which is weird, because maybe robot because they're like some sort of AI or whatever. But yeah, I think that's the only country I've heard of calling traffic light robots. So, but if you find yourself visiting here, at least now you know. So if you see a traffic light, it's called a robot. Okay. Another observation that I have, like, is like every time I go out. So typically here in this country, they are very strict with the, like, don't go out at night, because, or if you go out during the dark, you should be in groups, and so on. And the thing is, it has become something. Thankfully, I haven't been like mugged or anything like that. But they really said that it's rampant here. But what I've noticed is that everyone has agreed to it, and it became a fact. And then it's like the residents they're the ones that should adjust to it, which any country shouldn't do that. Like, the government should do something to stop, like, during the night people are mugged. Like, it shouldn't be like that. If you're a citizen, you should have the right to, like, go out anytime you want, right? And so I don't know, the government should make it safer, instead of like putting the burden on us, telling na, no, no, it's your fault, why did you go out during the dark? No, no, it shouldn't be like that. Like, I should be able to go out during the dark safe, and so on. So who knows, maybe in the future it will be like that. But of course, it's not a problem with me. I don't go out during the dark. Like, I love staying in my room. My room looks like a hotel. It's very cold. Like, it's always been a dream of mine to have like a room that has an aircon. This has like infinite aircon because it's very cold here. So I like staying here. I don't go out often. Another thing that I observe is that when I go out, so you see this, you have these beggars. They also have it here in Johannesburg. And so typically in the Philippines we have like beggars, like they will like that, ay kuya kuya, pembarya. They will do that, and you can tell right away that they are beggars. Here it's very hard to like tell. Like, sometimes when you walk, so like I said in my first chronicle, you say hi to people, and you'll be like, hey, how are you? Or, you're fine, I'm good, the weather's good, or something like that, right? But sometimes you see people walking the streets, like, they dress formally, they have bags and so on. But sometimes they're actually beggars. So like I look more like a beggar compared to them. But they're like, hey, do you have something like that? So it's very hard to tell if someone is a beggar or not. But another curious thing is that, so at least they're beggar, unlike the Philippines, they're not like irritating or something. If you say no, then that's done. Usually my default excuse is like, I'll just say I'm a student. I have no money. I'm just a student, and then they'll just let me go. But the curious thing here is that usually the beggars that I meet, when they ask for money, it's usually a specific amount. So I don't know what's with that. So they'll be like, "Hey, how are you? Are you good? Do you have 11 rands?" It's like, that's so exact. For your information, the rand is the currency here, and the conversion to Philippine peso is like times four. So 1 rand here is like 4 pesos in the Philippines, around 4 pesos. So you walk, people will be like, "Hey, do you have 23 rands?" I'm like, why is it so exact? So it's weird. They ask, they beg for you, but it's exact. So the thing is, they're not irritating the beggars here, but they ask for like specific amount, which is weird. In the Philippines, the beggars are sort of irritating, but you can give them anything you want. But yeah, I'm not that fond of giving money to beggars, because like in the Philippines they're like some part of some sort of, I don't know, um like group, or so I typically don't help them unless they are of the talented sort, like the one in one time I gave one who was like playing the guitar and singing "Never Say Goodbye" by Bon Jovi. That's a very hard song, and like he nailed it, so I gave him money. But anyway, so that's that. Another observation here that I learned is that, so like I said, people, when I just say I'm a student, it's very easy. Like, I'm a small guy compared to like Africans. People here, they're typically huge, and uh, I am just a small guy, so I can get away with just saying I'm just a student. So in fact, I ride the bus every day, even though it's just for like students. So if during the when the time comes that they will check the ID, which they don't, they can easily see that in my ID it's what's written there is staff instead of students. So I'm not supposed to ride a bus, but Deepak said that I just walk in there confidently like a student, and there I can ride the bus. But the curious thing that I want to tell you about is that, so one time, like my first Sunday here, we had lunch with Dr. Alan Cornell. He's one of my like supervisors here, and his wife is a Filipina, and so we ate. And after we had dinner, no, sorry, lunch, Deepak asks, "Oh, so the wife of Alan, so can you tell right away that she's a Filipina?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure, yeah, she's obviously Filipina, her looks and so on. It's so Pinay." And Deepak is like, "Oh, really? I can't tell." It's like, so the weird thing is that if you're Asian, it's very hard to tell. Like, I don't know, maybe when they look at me, I look like Chinese or whatever, but they have a hard time distinguishing a Chinese versus a Filipino versus Korean or something like that. Which is, if you're an Asian, you can do it. And the nice thing is that according to Deepak, there is also that. So me, when I see an Indian, like, everyone looks like an Indian. But according to Deepak, he's an Indian. He said that he can distinguish Indians from the north part and so on, so like that. So maybe it's something that we Asians have. We can distinguish who is Korean, who is like that, because we are immersed in that region. But some people cannot. And even in fact, here in South Africa, so everyone like look like South Africans to me. But according to Deepak, people can tell if you're South Africans. You can tell this guy is from Nigeria, this guy is from, I don't know, Cape Town or whatever. So you can distinguish their faces. So yeah, it's very fascinating, that in a certain continent you can distinguish the I don't know, subcultures of your people who belong to the same continent, right? And so what else? By the way, by the end of June, there's a so-called SAIP. It's similar to SPP. It's like a National Physics Congress here, and it will be towards the end of June. It will be in South Africa in a place called Bloemfontein. So I'll be presenting there a poster presentation on machine learning as used in particle physics. Okay, so yeah, that's the final news. And I'm still applying for the funding, but end of July, so mid July, if it's approved, I will be going to Switzerland to CERN. A week after that, I'll be going to Italy for the MCNet event generators for the LHC. And then if that will, I don't if my let's say my visa will be approved, then I'll also be getting the Iron Maiden ticket. I'm going to Poland because like it's my only chance to watch them. Okay, so yeah, so I think that's the only thing that I can relate now. So next week I can talk to you again about QCD and other experiences I have in here in South Africa. So once again, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next week. Bye bye.